For decades, Rance Allen's voice could shake churches, fill concert halls, and inspire millions with a level of passion few singers could ever match. To the public, he seemed to have achieved everything: a legendary music career, a respected ministry, and the admiration of fans around the world. But behind the standing ovations and powerful sermons was a story marked by relentless pressure, heartbreaking personal trials, and a final chapter that left countless people stunned. What really happened to the man whose voice became gospel history? And why do so many believe his greatest struggles remained hidden until it was far too late? Long before he became one of the most recognizable voices in gospel music, Rance Allen was simply a young man growing up in Monroe, Michigan, surrounded by faith, family, and music. In the Allen household, singing wasn't just entertainment. It was part of everyday life. Church services were filled with powerful harmonies, heartfelt testimonies, and the kind of spiritual energy that left a lasting impression on everyone in attendance. It was in that environment that Rance discovered not only his remarkable vocal ability, but also a calling that would shape the rest of his life. Together with his brothers, Tom and Steve, he formed the Rance Allen Group during the late 1960s. At first, they were just another family gospel act, hoping to reach local congregations. But anyone who heard Rance sing quickly realized there was nothing ordinary about his voice. He could soar into breathtaking falsettos one moment and deliver thunderous, soul-shaking notes the next. His performances were emotional, unpredictable, and completely unforgettable. That distinctive style didn't fit neatly into the traditional gospel mold. Some churchgoers embraced the fresh energy, while others questioned whether his passionate delivery sounded too influenced by soul and rhythm and blues. At a time when gospel music was expected to follow certain conventions, Rance Allen was pushing boundaries simply by being himself. Ironically, those very criticisms helped make him a pioneer. As audiences grew, so did opportunities. The group's recordings began attracting national attention, introducing gospel music to listeners who might never have stepped inside a church. Their success demonstrated that faith-based music could reach beyond denominational lines without losing its spiritual message. Younger audiences, in particular, connected with the emotional honesty in Rance's performances, helping expand gospel's influence during a transformative era. With growing popularity came larger venues, television appearances, and an increasingly demanding schedule. The trio found themselves traveling constantly, balancing rehearsals, recordings, and church appearances with little time to slow down. Fans saw the excitement of a rising career, but few considered what that pace required from the people living it. For Rance, every performance carried enormous expectations. People didn't simply want a great singer. They expected an unforgettable spiritual experience every time he stepped onto a stage. Delivering that level of intensity night after night required extraordinary physical and emotional energy. Yet he rarely showed signs of exhaustion in public, choosing instead to give audiences everything he had. As his reputation spread, so did his responsibilities. Success opened doors that many artists only dream about, but it also introduced pressures that would become increasingly difficult to escape. The more people admired his gifts, the more they looked to him not just as an entertainer, but as a source of hope, guidance, and unwavering faith. That growing expectation would eventually place Rance Allen in a position unlike almost anyone else, forcing him to balance two demanding callings at once. And that delicate balancing act would shape every chapter of his remarkable life. By the time Rance Allen had become a household name in gospel music, he was living two lives that constantly overlapped. One belonged to the recording artist, who electrified audiences with every performance. The other belonged to the pastor, and later bishop, who was expected to lead people through some of the most difficult moments of their lives. To many, those roles seemed perfectly compatible. In reality, balancing them demanded far more than anyone could see. Unlike entertainers who could step away from the spotlight after a concert, Rance's work rarely ended when the music stopped. After spending hours on the road, he might find himself preaching a sermon, counseling church members, officiating weddings, or comforting grieving families. His responsibilities extended far beyond the stage, and each one carried its own emotional weight. Those closest to him often described his generosity with time. Whether someone needed prayer, advice, or simply a listening ear, he tried to make himself available. Admirers viewed that dedication as one of his greatest strengths, yet constantly putting others first left little room for rest, and the demands accumulated year after year. Even as the Rance Allen Group continued recording acclaimed albums and performing around the country, he never abandoned his commitment to ministry. Instead of separating his music from his faith, he treated them as two expressions of the same purpose. That authenticity earned him tremendous respect across the gospel community. Fans believed that the man they saw on stage was the same man they encountered in church, and by nearly every account, that was true. Still, public admiration, people often assumed that someone with such deep faith always had the answers, always remained strong, and never struggled privately. Few stopped to consider that pastors experience exhaustion, disappointment, and uncertainty just like anyone else. Carrying the burdens of an entire congregation while maintaining a demanding career required resilience that few people could fully appreciate. As the years passed, honors continued to arrive. Awards recognized his groundbreaking contributions to gospel music. Fellow artists praised his influence, and younger performers looked to him as a mentor. Outwardly, it appeared he had achieved a rare balance between extraordinary success and unwavering faith. Yet behind the applause, the constant travel, long hours, and physical demands of decades in ministry were beginning to leave their mark. The signs were subtle at first, easy for audiences to miss beneath his infectious smile and commanding voice. Those hidden struggles would soon become impossible to ignore, revealing a side of Rance Allen's journey that even many devoted fans never realized existed. For most fans, Rance Allen always seemed larger than life. He walked onto a stage with contagious energy, delivered songs with unmatched emotion, and spoke with the confidence of someone whose faith could overcome any obstacle. That image became so familiar that many assumed it reflected his entire reality. But behind the scenes, the legendary singer was facing challenges that rarely made headlines. Years of constant traveling, preaching, recording, and performing had taken a physical toll. Unlike many artists who eventually slowed their schedules, Rance continued answering invitations because he believed his work was more than a career, it was a calling. Whether speaking to a packed sanctuary or singing before thousands at a concert, he gave audiences everything he had. Few realized just how much strength that required. As he grew older, health concerns became increasingly difficult to ignore. Public appearances sometimes revealed a man moving more carefully than before, but his powerful voice and joyful spirit often distracted audiences from noticing the physical limitations he was quietly managing. Rather than allowing those struggles to define him, he focused on the message he wanted people to hear. That determination inspired many, but it also came with a cost. Friends and fellow gospel artists have spoken over the years about his remarkable commitment to ministry. Even when dealing with personal difficulties, he remained focused on encouraging others. If someone needed prayer, guidance, or reassurance, Rance rarely turned them away. His willingness to serve became one of the defining traits of his character. His wife, Ellen Allen, was an especially important source of strength throughout those demanding years. While much of the public focused on Rance's performances and sermons, those closest to him understood that family provided the stability that allowed him to continue carrying so many responsibilities. Their partnership helped him navigate both triumphs and difficult seasons that unfolded away from public view. Meanwhile, the gospel music industry itself was changing. New generations of performers emerged, musical styles evolved, and audiences found countless new ways to consume music. Yet Rance Allen remained deeply respected across generations because he never chased trends. Instead, he stayed committed to authenticity, believing that sincerity would always outlast popularity. That consistency earned him admiration from artists far beyond traditional gospel circles. Musicians in soul, R&B, and contemporary Christian music frequently cited his vocal ability and emotional honesty as major influences on their own work. His legacy had grown far beyond the churches where his journey began. Still, admiration could not shield him from life's realities. As the years passed, the demands of age became more evident. Even so, he continued appearing before audiences whenever possible, determined to fulfill what he believed God had called him to do. Fans often left inspired by his resilience, without realizing how much effort each appearance required behind the scenes. Then came the heartbreaking news that stunned the gospel world. In October 2020, Rance Allen was hospitalized while dealing with medical complications. Despite receiving care, he passed away on October 31, 2020, at the age of 71. His death was not surrounded by scandal or controversy, but by an overwhelming sense of loss. For millions, it felt as though one of gospel music's most powerful voices had been silenced far too soon. Tributes poured in from every corner of the music world. Fellow pastors remembered his unwavering faith. Legendary performers praised his unmatched talent. Fans shared stories of songs and sermons that had carried them through their darkest moments. It became clear that Rance Allen's influence stretched far beyond awards or record sales. It lived in the lives he had touched. Yet as those emotional tributes continued, another question quietly emerged. How do you measure the legacy of a man whose greatest impact could never be captured by charts, trophies, or headlines? The answer would become even more meaningful as the world gathered to celebrate the extraordinary life he left behind. When news broke on October 31, 2020, that Bishop Rance Allen had passed away at the age of 71 after being hospitalized with medical complications, the reaction was immediate. Across churches, radio stations, and social media, fans struggled to believe that one of gospel music's most recognizable voices was gone. For many, it wasn't just the loss of a singer, it felt like the end of an era. Messages of remembrance poured in from every corner of the music world. Gospel legends, pastors, choirs, and artists who had grown up listening to the Rance Allen Group all shared stories of how his music had shaped their lives. Many recalled hearing his unmistakable voice for the first time and realizing that gospel music could be both deeply spiritual and emotionally electrifying. His influence reached far beyond gospel circles. R&B, soul, and contemporary Christian artists acknowledged the impact he had on their own performances. His fearless vocal style, emotional honesty, and unwavering faith had inspired generations of musicians, proving that authenticity could leave a lasting legacy regardless of genre. For members of his church, however, the loss was even more personal. They weren't simply mourning a celebrated performer. They were grieving a pastor who had baptized children, comforted grieving families, counseled couples, and stood beside people during life's most difficult moments. To them, Bishop Allen wasn't a distant celebrity. He was a shepherd who remained approachable despite his international reputation. As tributes continued, many reflected on the consistency that defined his life. Fame had never seemed to change the core of who he was. Whether preaching to a small congregation or performing before thousands, he carried the same passion, humility, and devotion that had marked his ministry from the beginning. His funeral became more than a farewell. It became a celebration of a life devoted to faith and service. Friends, family, fellow ministers, and musicians honored not only his remarkable talent, but also the compassion that had touched so many lives away from the spotlight. The stories shared during those services painted a fuller picture of the man behind the powerful voice. Yet even amid the celebration, there was an unmistakable sense of unfinished conversation. Many people began revisiting his recordings, sermons, and interviews with fresh appreciation. They noticed messages about perseverance, gratitude, and trusting God through hardship that seemed even more meaningful after his passing. His words continued to encourage listeners, almost as though he were still speaking directly to them. Perhaps that is why Rance Allen's legacy has endured so strongly. While countless artists are remembered for their biggest hits, he is remembered for something far deeper, the lives he changed through both his music and his ministry. Even today, years after his passing, new listeners continue discovering his recordings, while longtime fans return to them for comfort and inspiration. That enduring connection raises one final question. What is it about Rance Allen's story that continues to move people so deeply, long after the applause has faded? Some artists leave behind songs. Others leave behind a movement. Rance Allen managed to do both. Years after his passing, his voice continues to echo through churches, playlists, and performances by artists who were influenced by his groundbreaking style. But the reason people still speak about him with such emotion goes far beyond his vocal ability. His story represents something many people can relate to: the struggle between carrying a purpose and carrying the weight that comes with it. Throughout his life, Rance Allen appeared to possess an almost impossible combination of talent, faith, and determination. He could command a stage, deliver a powerful sermon, and connect with audiences in a way that felt deeply personal. Yet behind that inspiring image was a man who faced the same realities everyone faces: pressure, aging, health challenges, and the responsibility of showing strength even during difficult seasons. That contrast is what makes his journey so powerful. The world often sees successful people through the highlights, the awards, the performances, the standing ovations, and the moments that become part of history. But Rance Allen's story reminds us that behind every public figure is a private battle that audiences may never fully understand. His career was built on breaking barriers. At a time when gospel music was often expected to remain within traditional boundaries, he helped introduce a new energy and emotional style that reached people who may never have connected with gospel before. He proved that faith-based music could be passionate, modern, and powerful without losing its message. But perhaps his greatest achievement was not a song, an award, or a performance. It was the ability to make people feel seen. Fans often described his music as something they turned to during moments of pain, uncertainty, and loss. His voice became a source of encouragement for people facing battles of their own. Whether someone was listening during a difficult night or worshiping during a Sunday service, his songs carried a message of hope that extended beyond entertainment. That kind of impact cannot be measured through charts or statistics. It exists in memories. It exists in the people who found strength through his music. It exists in the artists who followed his path because he showed them what was possible. And it exists in the countless lives touched by his ministry. Rance Allen's passing left an undeniable emptiness in the gospel community, but it also revealed the incredible reach of his influence. The sadness surrounding his death came not only from losing a gifted performer, but from losing someone many viewed as a source of inspiration and spiritual guidance. His life was a reminder that even the strongest voices belong to human beings who experience struggles away from the spotlight. The same person who encouraged millions also had moments when he needed strength himself. That may be the most heartbreaking and beautiful part of his story. Rance Allen was not remembered because he seemed perfect. He was remembered because, despite every challenge, he continued showing up with faith, with passion, and with a voice that refused to be forgotten. And perhaps the question that remains is the one that makes his legacy so unforgettable. After everything he gave to the world, did we ever truly understand how much he sacrificed to keep giving it?